name is Jo Salter. I'm the founder of a brand called Where Does It Come From, which we launched in 2013, so it's a few years ago now. And what I was looking for when I launched the brand, because I'm so passionate about sustainable fashion, is I was looking for something where I could share the whole story of the production of clothing with people. The reason for that being is that I felt we've lost our connection with our clothing, especially those of us here in the West. We just don't know where our things come from. We just go to the shops and we buy what we want, and we don't think about any impacts from those things, either on the people who make them, or on the environment, or any of those things. So that's what I was looking for, and I came in contact with a wonderful lady called Shalini Shetharmeen, who you are going to be hearing from in a few minutes, so I won't steal her thunder. But she introduced me to Khadi. I've taken several trips to India now and learned a lot more about Khadi, and basically fallen in love with it. And then in about 2018, I was introduced to Kishore and became part of the Khadi London team as well, so that I can share my love for Khadi with everyone and involve it in our brand. So what we've done as part of Where Does It Come From brand is we've launched a number of different products to the retail and the wholesale market. You can see some of them in this photograph, as well as campaigning for a more ethical, sustainable fashion industry. Hence this photo shoot was done at the docks, so that behind these people wearing beautiful natural Khadi clothing, you can see containers and containers and containers of different products that have been moved around the world. So it was meant to be a bit of a suggestion of the dangers of mass consumption, but I won't go too much into that one. We've been working together with Khadi London for the last few years. I've been working with other different people that you're going to hear from as well over the past few years, and in creating different products for those. Can you click through, please, Prapti? You've heard a lot from the wonderful Kishore about Khadi and the heritages, the heritage of Khadi, and the important facts of it being community-based, work by hand, sustainable, and creating rural employment. You all know far more than I do about the heritage of Khadi, so I'm not going to talk too much about that one. But I think it was very interesting to hear from Kishore about the developments that have taken place in recent years, which are bringing Khadi much more into the modern arena, so that we can start, we can continue to get more and more people interested in it as a sustainable fabric. Next slide, please, Prapti. So sustainable fashion, I don't believe that most of you would be here if you didn't have some interest or knowledge in sustainable fashion. It really is a growing movement. Since I became involved, like I say, about 2012, 2013, there are enormous changes that have happened in the sustainable fashion or ethical fashion industry. One of the biggest ones that I've really noticed are the fact that it's in the news so much. I've just got a few headlines here so that you can see how there's something in the news pretty much every day talking about sustainability and ethics in products, and pretty mainstream newspapers in the UK like The Sun and The Mirror are offering guides on sustainable fashion, whereas I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago it was never mentioned at all. And now you hear celebrities, the Duchess of Sussex, people like that are promoting sustainable and ethical fashion. For those of you in the UK and elsewhere, you may have heard a lot of the news this year talking about very fast fashion brands like Boohoo being called out because it's been discovered that their factories are paying people under the minimum wage and giving them very unsafe working conditions for what they're doing. So really in the news. Sorry, the cat's about to invade. I'll just move it off. Excuse me. That's the wonders of live TV, isn't it? Yes, so in the news an awful lot. There's big movements that have been growing and growing, especially with a young audience. One of those is Fashion Revolution, which started off in 2013 after the Rana Plaza factory disaster in Bangladesh. And that has now grown to a multi-million member campaigns across the world, including setting up their transparency index about 2 years ago, which has basically explored all the big fashion brands and talked about how transparent or untransparent they are. The idea being that if you're not transparent, and by transparent I mean you can share all the details about your production, if you can't do that, how can you tell if there's slavery or negative impacts in it? So transparency is not the answer, but it's a way to get to the answer. Another huge issue that we're all facing is the climate emergency. For those of you in the UK, you may have seen David Attenborough's TV documentary last week, which is still on iPlayer. If you haven't, I urge you to watch that, because that talks more clearly than anything about the situation that we're facing. So if we can, as people working in the sustainable fashion industry, if we can adopt principles that will help protect our environment, then that's what we must do. It's really important. I've talked about media coverage. I would say as well that one thing we're finding, people who've worked in the industry for a while, that now they're looking for experts. So for example, I was recently invited onto BBC Radio 2. We get asked to speak at events because suddenly people who were just doing this funny little thing called ethical fashion in the background, they need people like Kishore, like myself, and many of you who can talk about these issues and explain them, which helps because we can start encouraging people to understand why we're doing this. So it's important. A very key thing that we're seeing, I'm sure all of you have seen, is what we call conscious collections. So the bigger brands are putting out their conscious fabrics and their organic collections. And that is actually really good news, because it means that they're recognizing that customers want that customers are no longer just happy to buy any old thing and not know where it comes from and not know how it affects the planet and the people who are making it. So by them jumping on the ethical fashion bandwagon, and you know, it may or it may not be as ethical as we would like, but it's a step in the right direction and a recognition that that's what people want. In terms of what people want, Google search for the term sustainable fashion went up by 250% last year, so that we know people are trying to educate themselves, find out more about sustainable fashion. And in a survey done by, I can't read it on who, there was a survey of asking people of different age groups whether they would pay more money for eco-friendly products. And if you look at the spread across the age group, the millennials, so the age 22 to 35, 61% said that they would pay more to have some eco-friendliness in the products that they're buying. So that's really good news. And you can see it's, it's pretty high all across the board. Even the older people are nearly half people would pay more. So I think there's some really good news in terms of awareness, in terms of key issues that we're getting behind, and people wanting to get involved in sustainable fashion and being willing to pay a little bit more for it too. Next slide, please, Prapti. That was the good news. I'm now going to, be a little bit of a voice of negativity, just to show you that we have a bit of a way to go with this as well. So in the UK, the ethical clothing market in 2019 was just under 50 million. So that doesn't sound like too small a number until you reflect that the weekly spend on women's shoes was 62 million. So women are spending more on shoes every week than is being spent in the ethical fashion market in the UK. So that to me suggests that these people who say that they're willing to spend a little bit more to have ethical and eco-friendly products are not quite there yet. They're still, they're in their head that that's what they want to do, but there's still so much choice and there's budgets to think about and other issues before they're actually going to do that, take that next step. But we can make it easier for them. in all the ways that Kishore has talked about in terms of bringing costs down, creating beautiful products that they must have, etc., and changing the culture. The other major competitor, in a way, is charity shops, because when you're talking about sustainability to people that want to buy clothing, then their attitude is that they will go to the charity shop. And I'm all in favor of that. That's completely understandable, because you're keeping clothing that's been created already being used. So it's a really good thing. But you have to bear in mind that a lot of ethical customers will go to the charity shop rather than buy new. I think it has to be a mix, really, between the two if we want to save our planet. The other area, I talked about the big brands that are doing their conscious collections. A term you may have heard coming up more and more is the term greenwashing. And that's something in the industry that we're all working on dealing with through transparency, through telling the stories behind our clothes. The idea of greenwashing is that you're trying to say that you're much more sustainable and eco-friendly than perhaps is the whole story. It's not quite not telling the truth. It's more selling up the little bits that you are doing. So for example, if you've got a supply chain that's creating t-shirts and you're using organic cotton, you will stress the organic cotton part, but perhaps not the fact that the factory that you used to make them was using not particularly good labor practices. So it's upselling the good bits and hiding the not so good bits. And that's why that fashion transparency index by Fashion Revolution is so important, because we need to know every single stage of the journey. And that's something that we can do with Khadi very easily. It's built into Khadi to have that kind of transparency. And the work that Kishore was talking about, we can bring in more modern elements to help tell that story a lot better. One challenge that we have, another challenge that we have, is what customers expect to pay for things. And I think that's going to be even more challenging this year after the coronavirus pandemic, because people and customers are shorter of money even than they were last year. And we've certainly seen with businesses, they are expecting to pay a lot less for goods than that it actually costs to make those goods and to sell those goods. So there's a bit of a disconnect between expectation and actuality. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a quick drink. It's not so warm here in the UK as it is in India. So yeah, so we've something we have to deal with. And I think as well, a lot of that can be helped by storytelling, because if people understand the craftsmanship, the positive impacts of the story, then hopefully they will be persuaded that it's worth paying that little bit more to know where things come from. In the UK, there's issues around regulation. There was a very big piece of work done by the Environmental Audit Committee, part of the government, looking at the impacts of fast fashion on the environment and the workforce. That happened over 2018, 2019. Where does it come from? Inputted into that piece of work. And it came up with a number of recommendations. I think it was 13 different recommendations that came out of that. They were put to the government so that they could discuss putting them into legislation, into law. One of them was the famous, let's put a penny on each garment, which will then be collected together and used to dispose of it in a more environment friendly way. But unfortunately, our government rejected every single recommendation that was put forward. Now, there's a lot of work happening to try and start that up again, get them to talk about it again, but with the pandemic, that's slipped to the sidelines, unfortunately. So I'd say that it doesn't sound like good news, but there's progress, there's definitely ongoing progress, and we just have to keep fighting, those of us in that industry. Next slide, please, Prapti. Back to some good news again. So we bill what we do in Where Does It Come From on Khadi London as kind clothes that tell tales. And that is offering something to you, the customers, about Khadi, about the different products that we put together. One of the key things is traceability, which you'll have seen if any of you have any Where Does It Come From or our joint venture products. There's a QR code on the label, which you can see on the side of the slide. That's one of our labels. And you can just scan that with your phone and you can find out the whole story of where your product came from. So that's giving a lot more peace of mind to customers. I've put a few photos on here of different products that we've pulled together over the last years. One of our earliest products working with moral fibre fabrics was this little denim dress. It was interesting hearing Kishore talking about denim, because we were also fascinated by denim and Khadi denim. So this is a Khadi denim little girl's dress here on the left. Then we have at the bottom, we've done unisex shirts and scarves. I'm wearing one now, again with moral fibre, organic cotton shirts, and it's showing you the different thicknesses of the fabrics that you can use between the denim and the shirts and the scarves to make absolutely beautiful clothes that hang beautifully and are comfortable and breathable and just really lovely fabric. More recently, on the bottom right are some scarves that we made, Khadi London and Where Does It Come From, as a joint venture for the software company SAP. And that was working with cotton, so the Kala organic indigenous cotton from Khmer up in Kutch, and used a maker down in Tamil Nadu to hand weave that into the beautiful scarves for SAPs. So that was a kind of a luxury end product. And more sort of business as usual lately for all of us has been face masks. Again, a joint venture between Khadi London and Where Does It Come From. And these have been put a lot of design work in, been working with Karuna at Gram Sewa Mandal in Border, and Karuna will talk, I'm sure, more about that work as well. And on the right is the label from those face masks I wanted to show you, because one thing with I really get, sorry, I'll get another drink. One thing I do get passionate about is labeling, because if you look at products that you buy in the shop, the label says virtually nothing, and it says made in a particular country, and that's just the last country that touched that garment, that did something to that garment. So in the space of a small label, you can't put too much, but we put the QR code so that you can find out everything. And then we've also tried to add information such as made in a sustainable and ethical social enterprise. We put Khadi, spun and woven by hand, made from organic cotton. So it gives the customer a lot more information about the product that they're buying so that they can connect a bit more with it. Khadi gives us the ability to do that. And to create beautiful products as well, full of ethics and sustainability. But one thing for me personally, it's about connecting customers, not just with their clothes actually, but with the people and the processes behind their clothes and that heritage. And I personally believe that if you know a lot more about who made your clothes, how they were made, and that they weren't made damaging the environment or causing harm to people, that makes us happier as human beings. So that actually improves our mental health and our positive contentment levels. That's something I feel very strongly about. Next slide, please, Prapti. The other thing you may not know is that actually Khadi has been in the UK for quite a while now, but because Khadi is not a well-known term over here, you don't often see it as a word. I think it is now coming out more, especially with the good work from Khadi London. But there's images here that I don't believe had the word or have had the word Khadi associated with them, but they are actually Khadi. And all of these different brands here in the bottom and more are using Khadi already. So you can see Khadi denim there. My stupid throat, with the denim suit from Birdsong, that's Khadi. And then over on the right hand, some of Where Does It Come From's products, and on the left are the Nights by Wilder, beautiful children's clothing there as well. So it is here already, you may not even have realized, and designers are using it in the UK and creating absolutely beautiful products. Next slide, please, Prapti. Okay, I just wanted to give a little bit, it's backing up very much what Kishore was saying about current Khadi thinking. And this was from a conference that myself and several members of the Khadi London team attended in February this year. We were lucky to get it done before lockdown happened. So we were over in India at the Globalization of Khadi conference. And there were some really interesting outcomes of that conference, which Kishore has referred to, so I won't spend a lot of time on. One was reframing Khadi for a youth market, because it was very clear that it was the older generations who had that passion about Khadi, and it's now the young generations getting passionate about Khadi. So that's really important. Fashion Revolution is behind that all the way, and they're pushing that with a youth market. Second one, marketing Khadi in terms of sustainability, not just heritage, is key. One that Kishore did talk about, different levels of Khadi that you can offer to the market. So you could have a luxury product that's handmade all the way by one person, you know, doing the spinning all the way through, or you can have a slightly more mass-produced version using solar. Then the idea of connecting people with craft was important. In the UK, we have things like Harris Tweed. Up in Scotland, we need to have the same kind of marketing around Khadi so that people understand that it is a craft made product and not a mass market product. And finally, really taking on the transparency and the impact measurement so that you can share information with the customers about the positive impacts that what they're choosing to buy has had on people and planet, and actually saying to them, you helped this many people, you've helped save this much water or carbon. So sharing that with customers to provide the connection. Next slide, please, Prapti. Just a quick one on the kinds of work that Khadi London has been doing over the last few years. It's not just about fabrics and products. We've been working on media exposure for Khadi. We've been creating the events such as the Khadi Initiative and the Festivals of Natural Fibres to try and link together different people with interest, especially within the UK, in different fibres, and trying to work with some of those such as hemp and flax. Kishore's been working, getting designers to go to India and actually connect with the supply chain themselves. This is a photograph of Henrietta from Henry, who's been over to India and met her supply chain, and working a lot with universities to help the designers of the future understand the benefits of Khadi as well. So it's not just about fabric and products, it's about inspiring the future. Next slide, please, Prapti, last slide. So in sum, basically Khadi is the ethical and sustainable fabric. We know customers are demanding fashion that is more ethical and sustainable. This has been recognized in the media and by mainstream brands as well. So Khadi offers this to customers. We can offer the transparency and the peace of mind. So we believe that Khadi has a key role to play in the future of a slow, fair and environmentally friendly fashion industry. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.